One of the best options or results of having students work in an online platform is that it allows students to be able to sort of pace their own learning. When you are presenting in front of the entire class, there's a certain level of structure where students, can't work ahead or feel worried or nervous if they fall too far behind. So by setting some things up on the computer or through Schoology, you can allow students some autonomy to work at their own pace, if that works for your own classroom. And a really useful way to help manage this is through completion requirements. So when you're on your course page, you can click Options and add student completion. So when you click on student completion requirements, for me right now, nothing comes up, but I can add a requirement. Now, on my home page, all I have right now are just my folders. So when I click on student completion and I add a requirement, the requirements are going to add to each of those folders. So for example, for the reading and writing toolkit, a member must complete. Well, what does that mean? Well, complete means that a student must access all of the material within that folder. And automatically, the checkbox that requirements must be completed in sequential order comes up, meaning a student must complete everything in this folder before they complete everything in that folder. Now, for me personally, I never, ever, ever apply completion requirements to an entire course. Well, why? Because if I have a student that comes halfway through the year, Schoology is not going to let them move on until they've completed everything before that they've missed. So instead, I really like to limit my completion requirements to smaller items that I find really, really integral for students to work on. So for example, my course basics folder. Well, that's all of my minimum requirements that students must work through. So I do the same thing again. I click Options, I click Add Student Completion, and I've set my course expectations, which has my class syllabus, that students must view the item. Well, because this is a page, the only option for them is to view. Same thing for my ZPD. Well, the only option is for them to view because that's a page. However, if I have something like an assignment, now I have a couple of different options. Students must post a comment or reply. Students must make a submission, or students must score at least a certain percentage. So because this is an assignment and I have to hand grade it, I don't want to set it at a score yet because I might not get around to it immediately. Instead, I just want to make sure that students make a submission for the week 1 MIQ. Now, if I wanted them to do each of these things in order, I would check that box. But for me personally, I really don't mind what order they do this work in. I just want it all to be done. So I'm going to change those settings. And now we'll see that a little check mark shows up for each of those students. I can click on student progress, and it'll now show for me the percentage of students that have done that work. Now, of course, my students haven't started school yet, so right now it's all at 0%. Another really great resource, I've gone back to my course from last year, is adding a folder within a folder. So I had my To Kill a Mockingbird folder, which is one of my main folders, so within my course. So every day my students would log in, I would say, great, we're working on To Kill a Mockingbird still. And then they would find another subfolder. Now, I wouldn't normally do this because, again, like I mentioned on our pages video, you want to limit the number of clicks that students do. But for this particular classwork, I added a completion requirement to every single assignment because students had to do every single thing for that day, which allowed me to say, great guys, today we've been working on all of this stuff. I want you to work at your own pace today. For this article, you have to view it. You have to read the article. For the quiz, you need to make a submission. For the vocabulary, you just need to view the item. But for the assessment, I need you to score at least an 80%. Now, the key with something like this is that when you put quizzes or assessments that you have a score at least, you need to make sure that you also set it that students can take these multiple times. Because let's say I had checked that these needed to be completed in a specific order. If a student didn't get an 80 and you had it set that they could only take it 3 times and they get a 60, 60, 70, well, they haven't gotten an 80 yet, which means they didn't complete that requirement. They're not allowed to take the test, let's say, more than 3 times, so they wouldn't be able to move on to the next work. Again, you can navigate this 2 ways. One, by allowing students to take the quiz as many times, an unlimited number of attempts, or you can make sure that students can complete these items in any order that they like, so if they do not pass one, then at least they can do everything else. So for the assignment, they needed to make a submission because I was going to hand grade that exit ticket. One of the reasons this becomes really valuable is if I let students, do a DIY day, they're working on their own and they're doing everything in their own order at their own pace. Students that are a little far behind, I can see where they're at compared to the rest of their classmates. So again, I'm going to pull up what my progress looked like. So I'll close out of this. So then I can see for certain students, great. Jane has read the article. She's taken the first quiz, she's worked through the vocabulary, and right now she's in the vocabulary application assessments. But she already jumped ahead and did the diction analysis too. It becomes really valuable because if this is the end of the class period, I know she's on track. But if I expect students to have at least 2 of the boxes checked off, 2 of the assignments done, and I'm near the end of class and I see that John, however, hasn't finished any of this work. Well, now I know that he's the first person that I need to go back and check in on. I also really love it for days where I might be out with a sub and I can just send students messages and say, hey, it looks like you're not completing what you need to work on. You need to get to work. Otherwise, you're not going to get any participation credit for today.